Hey, everybody, it's Jordan, JDB Mays on the Wolverine Sports Forum. If you're following along with my DePaul dynasty on there, I appreciate it. May bring you some videos about DePaul in the future, but I'm also in the CBGM League. I'm the manager of Minnesota, Cleveland State, and DePaul. And with my Minnesota Golden Gophers in the tournament, I felt a little biased, but I wanted to break down, get an idea of the region that I was in, get an idea of my prospects going into this tournament. Also, just look at the New Orleans region as a whole. It's something I haven't done before, but something I was really excited to do. So what I'm going to do is go game by game, breaking down the first round. All 16 teams, I want to talk about each of them individually, but go through each of those matchups and start to get an idea of, are there teams that may be on upset alert? What teams have a nice path to the Elite Eight or even the Final Four? And can anyone stop Memphis? I think that's the big question. So starting at the top, starting with what I consider to be the best team in the country, we got to talk about the Memphis Tigers, the 1 seed taking on Cal State Fullerton in the first round. If we're looking at this Memphis Tigers team, what they've done this season is remarkable. 30-2 on the year, currently on a 13-game win streak, including just dominating the AAC conference. Their last loss was actually months ago, a 3-point loss, a 1-possession loss to UCF. Also, their only loss in the AAC all season. They're one of very few teams in the country to rank in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating. Their net rating now is second, just behind Florida, and they've really started to catch up. Possibly by the end of the tournament, they could be first in net rating, seeing as how solid they've been playing during this win streak. What's really interesting about this Memphis team for me is it's not an efficient offense, but it is a team that has maximized their number of possessions. It's a team that gets after it on defense. They're 8th offensively, 3rd defensively, and it's really that defense that makes them go. They found a way to just keep turning their defense into offense, allowing just 63 points per game. Really what they're doing is stifling teams on one end of the floor, frustrating them. And by the end of the game, they start to go on runs, and Memphis is able to pull away in a lot of these games because teams are just out of options. They're out of solutions for how to beat that Memphis defense. And Memphis is a team that's going to play you straight up. And it's because right now they have the athletes to be able to do it. And when you're talking about the Jimmies and Joes and not just the X's and O's, for Memphis, you have to talk about Andre the Giants. You got to talk about the all Andre front court. Andre Emanuel and Andre Sanders, both seniors. They've started every game together this season, and together, combined, they're averaging 33 points a game, 17 rebounds, 3 assists, and 3 blocks. Tremendous. Both of these guys, I think, could be looking at, potential potentially being pro players, but they have an opportunity to do something really special in the tournament. This is a team overall. It's 4 seniors. All of those seniors are starters, and it's a team that just puts a lot of pressure on teams until they break. It's difficult to stay up with Memphis because of the power they have in the front court and the types of athletes they have. They don't go very deep into the bench, but they have players that can get them out of trouble. The thing you have to worry about is if the Andres aren't clicking, if you get one into foul trouble and maybe the shots just aren't falling, where does the offense come from? That would be my big concern with Memphis going into the tournament. If you shut down the Andres, who steps up for Memphis? They haven't really had anybody who's needed to step up because those two have been so solid, so consistent all season. So right now, it's not much of an issue. Again, this is the number 1 net ranked team in the country. You're looking at, that drive from Memphis to New Orleans being about, maybe 4 or 5 hours. So you're in good shape to have probably some home fans in New Orleans for those regional final games. And I think Memphis is going to be there. I don't see anyone challenging them early. And if we talk about the team that they're going to play earliest in that 1-16 matchup, we got to talk now about the Cal State Fullerton Titans. They may have celebrated a little too soon here. They just won 4 straight games, including the 3 games they needed to win in the Big West tournament to claim that automatic bid for the Big West. But going into the Big West tournament, they were the 4 seed. And this was a team that just throughout the entire season really struggled to find consistency. There were 17-15 on the year, but that it can definitely fool you because this was a streaky team. This was a team at the beginning of the year was much worse than that, 17-15. But by the end of the year, looked to be just kind of an average club. But the way they end up being average is very strange. So I want to talk a bit about that. They started the year 1-7. Then they kind of end up playing 500 ball before they get into January. And in the month of January, they go 6-2, kind of right the ship, figure out what they want to do defensively. And since then, since January, they lost 2 straight, then won their next 4, then lost 3, then won 4 to head into the NCAA tournament. A big reason why they were able to win those last 4 was because Kenyatta Koksic got hot. Kenyatta Koksic, one of their backcourt players, he's actually one of 3 seniors in their backcourt. And he's incredibly important because he's the offensive, he's the player to really get it going on the offense. With Koksic, you also have Coy Ward, their point guard, who's kind of a defensive stopper. They usually put him up against their best guard. And then you also have Delvin Brown. Delvin Brown's really just a shooter, again, providing some offense, a bit of a liability defensively, but those 3 kind of make this thing work for the Titans. Their style of play is really interesting. So they definitely play slow. They want to control the pace. They want to get to the line, play good defense. But the thing that they've struggled with all year is rebounds. They're 325th nationally, even worse in terms of offensive rebounds. So they're letting teams get too many of those second opportunities. They also not very good in the fast break, not good in open court. I think that's where they're really going to struggle against Memphis because they're just not a very athletic team. They want to kind of play you slow, make the game smaller, make it more of a half court game. I think they'll struggle to do that against Memphis. And even if they succeed and play at the pace they want to, play a style that they want to against Memphis, Memphis has the front court players that I think could really challenge them when it comes to playing just a half court game. So I think Cal State Fullerton, this is just a tough matchup for them. And I think they may have already, again, just celebrated a little too soon. They won the Big West tournament, not something they probably should have done as the 4 seed. But this is a team that I don't think has the offense to really give Memphis any trouble. But they're good enough defensively, only allowing 71 points per game, that I don't see them getting blown out, especially because they've played pretty well in their last 10 and on this little win streak right now. So because of that, I think, Memphis is probably looking at maybe a 15-point win in the first round, enough to maybe make some fans a little uncomfortable. If you're thinking you're the best team in the country, you probably want to beat one of the worst teams in the field by a little bit more than that. But I think Fullerton and the way they play, they're just not going to allow you to do that. So let's go back to the bracket a bit. Look at that 8-9 matchup, Purdue, Arkansas. This is one that's very interesting because in this region, you have multiple matchups with teams right next to each other in net rankings. And this is the first. So Purdue, the 8 seed, 29 in net ranking. Arkansas, the 9 seed, 30 in net ranking. Let's start with the Boilermakers. A very interesting team, one that I'm a little more familiar with because they come from the Big Ten. This is a team that, struggled a bit during the season, 19-13 overall, 11-9 in the Big Ten. They were competitive, but toward the end of the year, lost some big games. While they were 7-3 in their last 10 games of the season, their losses were by double digits, including a 20-point loss to Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament. They make the quarterfinals of the Big Ten tournament and then get absolutely trounced by Wisconsin. This is a team that took care of the bad teams on its schedule, but struggled against the good teams. They were only 4-11 in their quadrant 1 games. And really, if you look at what their best win on the season was, it's pretty far in the rearview mirror. It's probably beating Xavier on a neutral court, 78-71 back in the non-conference bit of the schedule. But really, this is a team that, has had different seasons throughout this one season. They lost 4 straight to close the month of January and open February. And then since then, they've been 7-3. But they also had 3 bad losses in that stretch. Started non-conference a little rough. But what is kind of righted the ship for them, if you look away from that Wisconsin game, if you say, that's the anomaly of the last 10, the big loss to Wisconsin, what's going right for this team? I would say it's Paul Jennings. Paul Jennings really took over, and he's been the leading scorer for Purdue in 5 of their last 10 games. And he's been a big part of why this team has been able to kind of get over the hump, get into the tournament in a comfortable position, not just be on the bubble. And coming in as the 8 seed, I think part of that is credit to the strength of the Big Ten this season. And part of it is credit to this senior core for the Boilermakers. So the top 5 scorers for Purdue are all seniors, and it's led by Paul Jennings. But you cannot forget about Jeremy Wagner. Jeremy Wagner is absolutely the best player on this team, averaging 18 points a game, 6 rebounds and 4 assists. He's actually putting up 10 3-point attempts per game. He's only hitting a third of those. So you may want to see a little better shooting percentages out of Jeremy Wagner, but somebody with definitely some irrational confidence and not afraid to put up the shots. He needs someone else. And that's been the issue throughout the season. Jeremy Wagner has needed a running mate. And when Paul Jennings has stepped up, the teams look good. But when he hasn't had Jennings or no one else has been able to score in double figures, which has been an issue for Purdue all season, it's been on Wagner, and he hasn't been able to do it on his own. This is a team that really relies on its defense. They're ranked 25th nationally defensively, 237th offensively. That's a big yikes. And it's a big concern when you're playing a team like Arkansas. I'll get to that in a minute, but just focus a little bit more on Purdue being ranked 237th offensively. This is likely the worst shooting team in the Big Ten. And that's saying something, because the Big Ten is not full of great shooting teams. But Purdue, 328th in field goal percentage, 311th in three-point percentage, and 224th in free throw percentage. So this is a bottom 50 to bottom 100 team in almost every shooting category nationally. And it shows up in their games. It's a team that is really well disciplined, plays great defense. Their guards do a really good job of shutting teams down. They take away what teams want to do. But the front court can get beat up a little bit. The front court also doesn't offer a lot of offense, and that can get in the way. And again, it kind of comes down to asking Jeremy Wagner to do so much on both ends of the floor that in a lot of games, he just runs out of gas and is unable to do it. As great as he's been this season, they've needed somebody else to step up. If Purdue wants to make a run in this tournament, they're going to need someone to step up and probably become the best player on the court besides Wagner. The other way they can win, of course, is just relying on that defense, making games kind of ugly, playing some solid Big Ten basketball first to 70. If they do that, I think Purdue could be in a place where they can get out of the first round, maybe give Memphis some headaches. But this first round matchup is really tough for them. And it's a styles make fights argument that I want to talk a bit about here. So let's go to the Arkansas Razorbacks. Arkansas comes in 30th in net ranking, 22-11 on the season, 11-7 in the SEC. A really nice run in the SEC tournament and lost in the finals by 7 to Vanderbilt. Before that, they were 7-3 in their last 10. And if you take away some of the bad losses they had early in the year, Arkansas seems to be playing their best basketball right now. And they've been pretty solid throughout the year. But they definitely found their stride late in the season. Like I said, there were some real bad losses early in the year. They had a loss to my DePaul team, which should not have happened. DePaul was not good this year. Also lost to McNeese State. So you have 2 quad 4 losses on this resume. But a good run to end the year, good against SEC opponents. And that run to the finals definitely put them, on the other side of the bubble comfortably. It's a team also that was 2-5 in quad 1 games. And when you're looking at that quad 1 resume, I just talked about Purdue played in 15 quad 1 games. Arkansas played in half of that and only won 2 of them. So it really speaks to the strength or lack thereof of the SEC this year. Also, again, credit to the Big Ten. But Arkansas just not challenged a lot this year. So it's kind of tough to get an idea of what type of team is coming into the tournament. But if you just look at the style of play, it's a team that would definitely make Nolan Richardson proud. They have stayed true to that 40 minutes of hell. They're averaging 77 points a game, very aggressive on defense. They want to play the full floor. Third nationally in steals with 10 steals a game. Because they play at that fast pace, you're looking at more possessions, but you're also seeing an offense that is not quite as efficient with those possessions. So overall, 107th offensively ranked, 68th defensively. So it ends up being a 67th net rating. A team that, overall average, relies on their defense to get them out of trouble. And it's the aggression and the frustration they can cause opponents defensively that has really kind of helped them late in the season. They've relied a lot on a freshman shooting guard, Adam Barrow. He's been really good for them. Not healthy right now. Should be fully healthy from that foot injury he's been dealing with by the Purdue game. That's big for them because they've been relying on him a lot this year. 17 points a game, 4 rebounds. He's shooting 35% from 3 on 8 attempts a game. You've seen those percentages kind of come down for Barrow late in the year. You're thinking maybe the foot injury is part of that. If he is fully healthy and going, I think he is the type of offensive catalyst that can, erase what Jeremy Wagner is doing on one end of the floor. And if Barrow is feeling it, he's a guy that can put up 20 without an issue. They have 3 senior contributors, but they just need to get more out of that front court. The 3 seniors that I mentioned, they've got some good wings, some guys that have some experience, but that front court relies on sophomore center Roy Monfrey and junior Jerome Cantrell. Those 2, luckily, are going to be matching up against a Purdue team that has struggled inside this year. But Monfrey and Cantrell, average rebounders, not scoring at a high percentage. That could be what gets them in trouble against Purdue. Because if they find a way to get the ball inside and they're not able to finish, that could be enough where you see Purdue, because they've been so good defensively and they're going to try to take away what you want to do best. That may force Arkansas to put the ball inside a little bit more, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on Monfrey and Cantrell. But I see this as being a style that's going to make Purdue a little uncomfortable. Purdue's not going to want to play at that pace. They're really going to challenge the ball. They're going to put a lot of pressure on ball. And because of that, I see Arkansas actually coming out of this game. I've got the 9 seed taking this one. I like Barrow because he's going to be healthy in this game. Arkansas seems to be playing some of their best basketball late in the season. We can forget about what we saw in November. Let's focus on what we're seeing in March. Arkansas seems like a team that is going to give us a really fun second round matchup against Memphis. Those are two teams that want to get after it, want to get up and down the floor. That's the matchup I'm hoping for in the second round. I also think it would be the best case if you're hoping Memphis doesn't make it out of the first weekend, you're hoping to see Arkansas because of the way they've been playing basketball recently. All right, back to the bracket, and now we have Notre Dame taking on the play-in game teams. So Notre Dame, a 5 seed, and they'll be taking on the winner of either St. Mary's or Georgetown. I'll talk about those two teams, but let's start with the Irish. So the Irish come in off a really solid season. They're 16th in net ranking, 23-8, 15-5 in the ACC. They had a real close 6-point loss to Duke in the semifinals of the ACC tournament. But before that, we're one of the hottest teams in the country. So if you go back to January 18th, Notre Dame gets blown out by UNC, just completely gets run off the court. They have a week off, they regroup. And since that January 18th loss to UNC, they're 11-3. That includes wins over Pitt, Duke, and a rematch with UNC. Also, if you look at their resume, no bad losses really to speak of. They have 2 quad 3 losses. They're both road games kind of early in ACC play. And this is a team that really is great offensively, but improved offensively late in the season. So they end up with an offensive rating 44th, 52nd on defense, so a net rating 27th. But it's really the offense, scoring almost 80 points per game and doing so in a pretty efficient way. What's really interesting about Notre Dame is it's not a one-man show. All starters average double figures. They're led by their senior forward, Anthony Conte. And he's putting up about 14 a game. So it really is a team effort. And that team effort extends to defense as well, because one of the things they've had to do all year is hide Chris Cox on defense. So point guard Chris Cox, he's a junior, very good shooter, an average defender, but they've really tried to need to hide him given his size in certain guard matchups, and also have to take the ball out of his hands. So Notre Dame's done a really good job of sharing the ball. Anthony Conte has taken on some of that, as well. It's a team where the usage rate is kind of even across the board. They play a really good team style of basketball. We're really good in ACC play, especially late in the year. Once that calendar switched, we started getting closer to February. Notre Dame was playing really well. And it's good there because they're going to play the winner of a play-in game that I think could give them trouble. So let's look now at Georgetown and St. Mary's, and we'll start with the Hoyas. So like I said earlier, you have a few matchups in this first round that actually put teams that are right next to each other in net rankings. The play-in game is another one of them. So we have the 8-9 game, 29th and 30th ranked teams, and we have the play-in game, the 46th and 47th ranked teams. Starting with the Hoyas, 46th ranked in net ranking, 19-11 on the year, 11-9, real up and down in Big East play. They actually ended the regular season 4th in the Big East, and it was because of kind of a slide at the end of the season. They were just 5-5 in their last 10. So besides being 5-5 in their last 10, they've also lost their last 2 games. They lost by 6, a close game against Xavier in the season finale, and that was before Xavier ripped through the Big East tournament. And they also had a loss in the Big East quarters to Villanova. They also, kind of late in the year, had 2 overtime losses that really stung them and hurt the resume a bit. A loss to my DePaul team in overtime and another overtime loss to Butler late in the season. So those February, March losses, again, culminating in a 5-5 record in their last 10 and showing that this team was slipping a bit. And it was because it seems like teams had kind of figured out how you can beat Georgetown. And the way you do it is you attack that defense. So this is a team that's ranked 32nd in offensive rating, 122nd in defense. It's a 49 net ranking. And it's a team that, again, like a good offense and an offense that can put up a lot of points, but finds themselves in a lot of shootouts. So while they're averaging 82 points a game, they're also giving up 76. So they continue to find themselves in a lot of back and forth games. And part of that is the style of play. They want to play fast. They want to get out and run. And it's led by a duo of juniors in the backcourt, including a 20-point per game scorer, Sherman Grundy. Grundy's averaging 21 points per game on 43% shooting from three. By far the best shooter on this team. His shooting is incredibly important for what they do offensively. But besides the points, also 6 rebounds and 6 assists a game. All around a very good player. And he's complemented by Ike Gosley in the backcourt, who's putting up 12 points a game. But Ike Gosley is shooting 28% on his three-point attempts, and he's taking 8 of them a game. Now, he has been playing through a wrist injury. That could have something to do with the shooting numbers being so poorly, especially late in the year. But that's someone, again, that definitely has a green light because it's the way Georgetown plays. But he's put them in some tough spots because he has not hit at a good percentage this year. They put a lot of minutes and a lot of pressure on their starters, and given their style of play, that's been part of the issue. You know, they get themselves in shootouts, and then you're putting a lot on those starters late in the game, and they've already put up big minutes. You know, that can kind of wear a team down, and it has worn them down throughout the season. But it's still a young team, only one senior contributor in their, 8-9 man rotation. So Georgetown, a team that I think could give people some fits because they have the ability to put up 80. They seem to do it multiple times this season, but they can get themselves in some trouble because, again, the defense has just been lacking, but so much of it is because of the style of play and the offense leading to really easy transition buckets for other teams. So the team that has that opportunity to knock off Georgetown in the play-in game is the St. Mary GAELS. I'm glad they made the tournament. They definitely deserve it because they are one of the best defensive teams in the country. But before I get into that, let's look at them, that resume from a little bit larger perspective. 21-10 overall record, 10-6 in the West Coast Conference. They were upset in the first round of the West Coast Conference tournament by Loyola Marymount. But before that, we're playing really good basketball. Before that loss, they'd won 5 straight and looked to be in a really good position. But that loss to Loyola definitely kind of, I think the committee wasn't sure what to do with St. Mary's after that loss. They don't have any, major injuries or anything, just kind of put out a dud performance. But it's a team that early in the year, it had some quad 1 games and were 4-3. So a winning record in quad 1 games. Their best win, definitely the 6-point win over BYU on the road, a good showing for them. But this is a team, again, completely relies on that defense. So they're 259th rated offense, 7th on defense. So it's a positive rating and 50th best net rating in the country. And it starts again with that defense only allowing 63 points per game. This is a team that is small, it's versatile, so it allows them to match up against a lot of different teams and play that kind of amoeba style defense. They don't really have a true big man. Their tallest starter is 6'8". That has gotten them in trouble where teams are kind of able to play a little bit of bully ball, a little bit of mouse in the house. Georgetown's not going to have that advantage. Georgetown's center is 6'9". He's the tallest starter that they're going to throw out there. They do have a 7-footer on the bench. He doesn't really see any minutes. So St. Mary's not really looking like they're going to face a size advantage in the play-in game. It's a team that plays a good amount of zone, and they play very disciplined. They play a pretty slow pace. They definitely want to limit possessions because they know they're going to shut you down on one end of the floor, and they're hoping they can do just enough on offense. And throughout the year, they have done just enough on offense. And it's because really of the work of one guy, and it's the senior forward, Welsh Hawkins. I think Welsh Hawkins is actually an NBA prospect. I'm not sure where he'll end up going if he does get drafted. This is a guy putting up 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists a game. He's taking care of the basketball. He's their best driver of offense. He's their best facilitator and a very good rebounder as well. But the problem, of course, with St. Mary's, they go as Welsh does. If Welsh Hawkins finds himself a little cold or in foul trouble, who steps up? So far for St. Mary's, it's been a team effort. They go about 8-9 deep, and they have, players at each position can play versatilely. They can throw some different rotations out there, but so much of this is going to be on Welsh Hawkins. If he has a great game, St. Mary's, they're probably going to hold you under 70, but can they get to 71? And if Welsh is clicking, they've been able to do it multiple times this year. So I really like St. Mary's in this game. I think they were playing really good basketball before that weird game with Loyola. We're going to chalk that up to just a bad matchup, maybe something weird there. So it definitely makes you nervous if you're St. Mary's going up against Georgetown, because that's a team that can put some points on the board. But I think St. Mary's is going to find a way to limit them. And if they can take advantage inside, get to the basket, find the weaknesses of that Georgetown team. And they've been able to do that against a lot of good teams this season. I think St. Mary's in a really good spot to win that play-in game and actually give Notre Dame some issues in that round of 64. So if I've got St. Mary's and Notre Dame, I'm probably still going to favor Notre Dame. I think they're just all around a better team. Anthony Conte is going to be a good, tough matchup for Welsh Hawkins. I think that's a matchup that you're definitely going to want to watch. Two senior forwards who are incredibly important to what their teams do. But St. Mary's, as good as their defense is, they haven't played a lot of teams that overall are as good as Notre Dame. I think that's going to hurt them. And I think it's advantage Notre Dame. I'd say the same if Georgetown's able to get out of that first round. Unless Georgetown is absolutely hot and stroking it from three, I like Notre Dame to come out of that game, no matter the matchup of who comes out of the play-in. Moving down to the bottom of the left side of the New Orleans region, we've got Stanford and Florida International. Stanford, maybe slightly underseeded. This is a team right now, 11th in net ranking. But I think that performance against Washington in the Pac-12 tournament really left a bad taste in the committee's mouth. They ended up probably dropping a seed lower than what you may expect. This is a team that had a really great year, 27-6, 15-3 in Pac-12 play. They go into the Pac-12 tournament as the number one seed. And as good as USC was playing, I think Stanford was absolutely the favorite. And it was because going into the tourney, they had won their 9 previous games, all by double digits. So a tough way to end the season, but overall a great season for Stanford. And if you look at that resume a little bit closer, there are no bad losses. Their worst loss was that loss to Washington in the tournament. They have 4 losses in quad 1 games, and then 2 outside, with Washington being by far the worst loss on the season. This is a team a little like Notre Dame, very good on both ends of the floor, but much better defensively than Notre Dame. Their 20th offensive rating, 12th defense for the Cardinal, a 7th net rating. This is a team that I think is going to give people fits, and it's because they're smart. They play a good style of basketball, and they do not beat themselves. They seem to be good at everything, but great defensively, especially interior defense. They're allowing only 66 points a game and are really beating people up inside. 7 blocks per game is 5th in the nation, and they're led by one of the better big men in the country, and definitely one of the better big men in the Pac-12, Richard Brown. Downtown Richard Brown has been putting up 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks this year, having a really great year. And Brown has been complimented all year by 2 seniors that have been incredibly important to Stanford. Point guard Daniel Dewani, 11 points, 4 assists a game, and Marvin Brooks, who's just a very good wing, good shooter. The question for Stanford, and this kind of seems to be the issue all year, they rely quite a bit on those starters. What are they able to get from the bench? Because I think that's going to matter in the tournament. When games start to get a little tighter, maybe you got, some guys in foul trouble, or, you're playing, you're playing a little tight. What are you able to get from someone on the bench? Is someone able to step up for Stanford? Because if Stanford wants to get to the Sweet 16, first they're going to have to probably beat Notre Dame, which will be a rematch of when Notre Dame beat them by 12 in November. But Stanford, I think they'd be a tough matchup for Memphis, because it's a good team. It's not going to beat themselves, but are they going to be able to keep pace with Memphis, especially if Memphis is able to really beat them up inside? That's going to be a real battle of strengths when you have Stanford's interior defense versus Andre the Giants of Memphis. That to me is going to be a really interesting matchup if we do get to see it in the Sweet 16, and I hope we do. I think Stanford deserves to be there. They're a very good team, one that I think I'm expecting gets out of the first weekend. But to do so, they're going to have to make sure they don't put too much on the back of Richard Brown. Someone else is going to have to step up. Is it someone on the bench? Is it one of those younger players? You're hoping you get some good performances in the first weekend, so you don't put too much pressure on Richard Brown. And so far, he's been able to answer the call. And honestly, given their first round matchup, he may be enough to get it done against Florida International. So now let's look at the Panthers. Now, Florida International, 74th net ranking, is actually pretty good for a CUSA team. And this is a team that went 13-5 in Conference USA, was by far the best team in that conference, 22-10 on the year. And again, like we're going to say about many of the teams in this region, they seem to be playing their best basketball at the right time. They've won 6 of their last 7, including, blitzing through the Conference USA tournament. But what concerns you is, Paul, they ain't played nobody. 0-5 versus their best non-conference teams, really struggled in quad 1-2 games. But this is a team that seems to be pretty good offensively, is going to struggle a bit on defense, but relies on 4 senior starters to get the job done. And so far through this year, Florida International, relying on those seniors, has been a pretty good team. They're 65th nationally on offensive rating, 111th defense. That comes out to a 67th overall net rating. And like I said, this is a good team that moves the ball well, shares it, spaces the floor. and just happens to be one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country. They're currently ranked 6th, shooting over 40% from three. The other side of that coin is they're the 3rd worst free throw shooting team in the country. Now, they're not shooting a lot of free throws. They end up shooting a lot of jump shots. So this is a team that like definitely can shoot their way out of a zone, but challenged one-on-one has struggled a bit this year. And if it comes down to free throws, they're going to be hurting. You don't see a lot of teams that shoot the ball that well that struggle at the line the way they do. But that is, just kind of the strange juxtaposition of this Florida International team. I think it's a good showing for Conference USA to have a team that played that well in the conference, end up getting a 13 seed. But unfortunately, I think the matchup is just too difficult. It's a team that can beat them a variety of ways. I expect Stanford's going to go in with a good game plan of how to beat Florida International. And the big thing is challenge them at the 3-point line, make those big men beat you. Don't be afraid to get physical. And if you do that, Florida International might crumble. So with that, we've looked at the left side of the bracket.